I think that when we think of the integrity and legitimacy of the democratic processes, election as the cornerstone of what differentiates all other political systems from democracy, then merits the kind of attention that we're giving to it as citizens. Now, usually, when you think in terms of elections, you think of what happens pre, that is, the lead to the election, during the election, and after the election. And sadly, for our country, all stages, all phases have been bedeviled by all kinds of political shenanigans. These shenanigans don't come from just the citizens. It's the fact that the political class of our country has decided that our political system and our democracy will not mature. And that's why it is sad that the opportunity we had to finally get the kind of electoral law that citizens would have absolute confidence in was botched. So what must we do? I think that number one, it is not yet over concerning the real-time electoral transmission of results at the polling unit. The reason that it must not be over for citizens is simple. You know, average voter participation globally is 61%. Average voter participation in Africa is 60.2%. Our average voter participation has so sharply declined from the high that it started on, 1999 and 2000 and, was it 2003? Yes. And today, at least with the last election, average voter participation for us as a country was 26%. You cannot have a democracy where only 26% of the people are voting, and you call it a democracy properly so called. So what it means is that the citizens are disavowing democracy. Now think of 2023 as 2023 as 26%. Do you know what the FCT election recorded? 14.8%. The municipal, which is half of the entire FCT territory, recorded 7.8%. I always say that in God I trust, that every other person must bring data. So, if I have brought this kind of data, and we're still pretending that we are a democracy, that's a pretense. Let's not pretend. What is the reason for this low participation? Well, number one is the fact that citizens don't even trust the electoral umpire. The electoral umpire is in trouble as far as citizens go. And so I can imagine someone who is newly appointed, sort of a bit, I saw your frustration trying to tell us that you're going to do the right thing. But you know what? We don't believe it. The reason, no, don't clap. I didn't come to get any claps. You know, the reason is simple. There has not been any promise made by INEC that is kept. None. The Gen Z generation that decided to register so much, with so much passion in 2023, were so let down, they were bruised out of the electoral process. Then, when the reform started for INEC law, it built up their confidence again. But what happened? Once again, shenanigans. So guess what the percentage, the data of public trust in INEC is, by geopoll, 68% don't trust INEC. That's a large number. So I want citizens to understand that there's a connection between democracy and governance. It's so connected, the correlation is so strong that those who think that this does not matter are making a big mistake. In this conversation, we're determining what will happen to the generation that's ahead. So one thing that must happen is we do need to stand down on the political class. Nigeria does not belong to the political class. Nigeria belongs to the Nigerian citizens. The Nigerian citizens are saying, we want transparency, unfettered. And I can speak to this quickly, Shehu, by virtue of what I know about exceptions. When I came back home to do the reform of the public procurement in this country, there were some rules that governed public procurement processes. But it had exceptions. When I did the diagnostics to start the reform, do you know what? Most of the contracts in this country were being procured on the basis of the exceptions. Do you understand what I'm saying, guys? Like, literally, 90% of Nigeria's contracts were being procured on the basis of exception rules. So the exception had become what? The norm. And when impunity becomes the way of life, there is absolutely no pathway to progress of society. So we should not take the provisos that are added to the electronic transmission of voters as though it is something that just accept it like that, manage it, as Nigerians normally say. No managing. The citizens of this country want transparency, and they must get transparency. That's number one. Number two, Shehu, and I'll give you the mic. Number two is that pre the election for 2027, we already see a sample of what would happen through the FCT election. There was voter suppression. The fact that people were going to 5 polling units looking for their names, that's already an exclusionary thing going on there. In a decade where disruptive technology has given us incredible possibilities, that should not be something we take lying low. So we do need to audit the FCT election and the processes that happened in order to give us insight into what is ahead of us in 2027. And a coattail to that is that pre-2027, here we are with such intimidation of the opposition. Those of us who are citizens, who don't belong to a political party, we see what's going on. And that enables me to say that if the ruling party continues to intimidate opposition in the way that it is doing, it is simply putting a death knell to democracy. Because democracy does not allow for shrinking spaces of participation. And by the way, citizens, the final word, if you think you don't matter, you're making a big mistake. You matter. A party that has found a way to get more than 80% of the states is afraid of transparency in elections. Don't you know what that means? It means that it already called the result for itself in a transparent election. And therefore is doing everything necessary to stop it. So what we must do is that citizens must gain their agency and collectively work, if not for themselves, for their children and for the children that will come through their children.